Do you have any guess who is more skilled at pushing my buttons than anybody on the planet?
I'll give you a hint.
Now, why do you think that is? Because she wants to hurt me? No, the truth is because nobody is closer.
Welcome to Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. I'm Dr. Greg Smalley.
And I'm Erin Smalley. Today, we're going to talk about something that we know a whole lot about, and that's hot buttons in marriage. Because everyone has them. Hot buttons are nothing more than deeper, more sensitized emotions that easily get triggered during an argument or during conflict.
Yeah.
Greg, I know you have several big buttons that I'm aware of, but do you want to share what those are?
Yeah. So for me, and again, I love the definition. So these are just deeper emotions. They're more sensitive emotions, just developed over years. I think what we usually start developing these, about 4 to 6 years of age. And so it's just something we all have. You know, for me, I had a pretty significant reading disorder when I was younger. So in school, I got teased a lot when I was asked to read out loud. And so somewhere along the line, I just started feeling failed, you know, like a failure.
Right.
Like I couldn't read right. And I know that, like, when I make mistakes now in my life as an adult, when I, do things wrong or I hurt you, whatever, it just instantly causes me to feel failed. The other big one, as a middle child, I just want to qualify that. As a middle child, I always felt invisible. I had very extroverted siblings, so my older sister, my younger brother. It was hard to compete kind of with them around that. And so I think at some point I just developed this real sensitivity towards feeling invisible. So if we're at the dinner table and everybody's going around doing their highs and lows like we often do, we did that last night as a family. So everybody went around, and I appreciated that at the end, because I was asking the question, and there are times where it seems to get to me and it's fizzled out, no one's interested, everybody's done, plates get collected, and then I end up feeling invisible. But you last night, I so appreciate it. I noticed it, that you went, hey, whoa. We didn't hear yours. And so that helped me. Again, my stuff, my issues, my heart, but
Your
invisible, feeling
Yes.
failed are the two biggies for me.
Versus for me, feeling invalidated or not good enough.
Yeah.
I definitely was one of those high-achieving academic kids in elementary
It's
school.
4.3 GPA in high school.
And
well done.
of course, I was always striving for more.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were just talking about my parents often didn't go above and beyond to praise me because they didn't want to make him feel bad because he wasn't academic. He was more into theater arts and that sort of thing. And so they really didn't do a lot of praising.
Yeah.
And it makes sense now that I felt invalidated and not good enough growing up. Those are two of my biggies.
Yeah, right. It won't be like one really big thing that'll influence these buttons in our lives, but we decide to heaven. We live in a fallen world and stuff is going to happen. We're going to go through hard moments, and it's often we develop these messages about ourselves. And we all do it. As we've worked with couples, we've just seen these buttons getting triggered for couples. We've experienced this, thousands of times in our 33 years of marriage. So it happens. But really what we want to focus on, what's really important, and what our guests are going to explain today, is that we each know what our triggers are. So there's an awareness that's so important. Where did these buttons come from? And then how to not let them catch fire in the midst of a conflict.
And then later, we're going to share with you an idea that will last for generations in your family. At least, hopefully, we are hoping it will last for generations. And then we have an email from a listener asking about her husband's gambling.
But first, we want to say congratulations to listener Julie's parents. So they're celebrating their 65th wedding anniversary. That's remarkable. And Julie kind of said this about her parents: the family is blessed to have such a great example of commitment with us for this long. it's great that she shared that with us. Now, Julie, next time though, you got to promise you'll give us their names so we can do a proper shout out. Give kind of credit where credit is due.
That's
Come on.
right. And today's program is special because we're featuring a presentation that was previously given by Dr. Bob and Jenni Paul. Bob is the Vice President of Focus on the Family Marriage Institute, and he's the primary architect of our Hope Restored Marriage Intensive program. His wife, Jenni, is an accomplished artist, and she regularly speaks with Bob at conferences. They've been married for over 40 years, and we'll start with Bob explaining a little bit about Hope Restored.
And we have been learning so much about God's design for marriage and what happens and what it looks like when people get out of line with God and are working contrary to his design. And they're confused because they don't understand, because they're believing and they're pursuing what they've been taught, and they don't understand why it's not working. And as a result of what we've learned and the tools and the techniques that we have, to my knowledge, the highest success rate in the world working with couples who are in crisis. And we see miracles occurring. Yeah, give God a hand for that. To date, we've worked with over 9,000 couples from every state in the United States and over 30 foreign countries. And I just sit back in awe. So, these lies have resulted in us. Greg Smalley and I produced a book last year, which hopefully you are at least aware of, called 9 Lies That Will Destroy Your Marriage and the Truths That Will Save It and Set It Free. And that's the model that has emerged over these years is embedded in this book. And the lies are on the surface, and then we show how the truth actually can be a source of restoration, of healing, of growth, and of discovery. So today, what Jenni and I want to share with you is something that we've realized is actually a way that people get lost and misguided. And it's really common, because what we want to share with you is something we've learned that is underlying all conflicts in marriage. Everybody is dealing with this exact cycle. The details will be a little different because we're different, and you're different from us. But the cycle itself that is underlying it is true for everybody. When we first discovered this, we didn't know it applied to everybody. And I'm telling you, when you finally realize you've been led to something, you've been given something that applies to everybody, it's gold. So what we want to do is spend a little bit of time of unpacking that for you and helping you to see, like we've learned, why when you get into conflict with your spouse, it virtually doesn't matter what you're arguing about. There will be an eerily familiar feeling to it. It's like, wow, we're talking about something different. We're arguing about something different. Why does it feel so much like the last time? And we want to be able to flesh that out and let you see that.
That's because the problem is rarely the problem. The conflict is more than the topic, and the process, there's a process going on beneath the surface. In fact, we kind of like to look at it this way. The issue on top is not the whole issue.
And that's the part we see. The part that we see commonly going on between us is only the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that really matters that's going on below.
So what is going on beneath the surface? We're going to give you kind of a little peek about a conflict. Well, we have lots of conflicts, so we're going to just pick one. Okay. One conflict, and we're going to use that. We're going to start with the above the surface issue, and then we're going to go deeper with it and kind of take you with us. All right, so this issue started because I was playing a game on my phone, and this game happened to have teams, and usually just a person kind of makes up a team and becomes the leader. It's not like any qualification. So I'm on this team, and as I'm playing on the team, there's 50 people. I noticed like 20 of them are not playing. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what's going on. I'm kind of new to this and such, and so I just chatted in the chat box, hey, you guys, I noticed you weren't playing. Is there anything I can do? Well, the leader wasn't really happy with that, and she disciplined me in the chat box in front of everyone.
Yeah, it was public.
It was public, and so I was like, oh, wow, I'm not 6 years old, and I'm not her child. That was really, hard. So I just, chatted back and said, just encouraging them, no big deal. And she chatted another one back that was even more severe. And I was like, wow, that was painful. So I told Bob, I was like, Bob, man, can you believe what she said? I mean, first it was like I was 6 years old, and this one's more like 2, like I'm an out of control, 2-year-old. And so Bob then.
I see my wife hurting. Yeah. And she's clearly disturbed by this. So as a normal male, not leaning on any of my knowledge as a therapist, okay, what do you think my response was? Well, I wanted to come up with something to help fix the problem. Okay, now when I'm in my professional mode, I know better than this, but in that moment, I was just being Bob the husband, and I see my wife hurting, so I thought maybe it would be helpful to help her to think about what might have been going on for this gal, so that she would be able to maybe just not take it so hard and so forth, and for some reason, it didn't land well.
It didn't at all, because it came out like I had said something that was wrong, and she was right in reprimanding me. That's how it came out. And so now, notice that we're going to have a conflict based on that belief system that happened between the two of us. But the whole issue started outside of the marriage. Often when conflict happens, it's something that happened with the kids, or something in the car, or something at work. And then you get home and you start sharing about it, and something below the iceberg system, goes on. So we started into an argument, and it kind of looked like this on what we give the couples, the chart.
Yeah, so what we're going to show you now is what we understand in hindsight was going on below the waterline, because obviously there was plenty going on for each of us that we were oblivious to at the moment. So we're going to take you below the waterline for Bob and Jenni. So this is what we call a reactive cycle, okay? And as you can see me at the top there, I've got a series of fears. Now that's relevant, obviously, here. We call them buttons, triggers, things that, we've all got them. You cannot survive any length of time in this fallen world without getting stung. Okay, so we all acquire these bruises, these wounds along the way. And here's some of mine. I hate feeling controlled. I hate feeling helpless and powerless. I hate feeling inadequate, misportrayed, or misunderstood. And I react even in the anticipation of feeling those things. I hate those feelings enough. When the button gets pushed, I will knee-jerk react. It doesn't take any thought, any deliberation. I will do things like I will complain, get defensive, go into fix-it mode, lecture, and talk about who's right and who's wrong. Now, what I really want, however, is to feel accurately portrayed. I like to feel successful, hate failure. I love feeling an experience of partnership, passion, and want to feel wanted. So that's a little bit about what's going on below the surface for me. How about for you?
Now, this is just a few. I mean, I've got a lot of buttons, but I don't like being controlled, suppressed, invalidated, judged, and ignored. And typically when those get hit, I react sometimes in anger or blame. I might get defensive and explain myself. I might judge, or I might go to who's wrong or who did what, right, wrong kind of a thing. Really what I want in the relationship is I want to feel heard, and I want support. I want approval to exist. I want value to exist, and I want validation of who I am.
Now you know a little bit about us. That's just there's plenty more than that, but we had to condense it to fit it onto our little map here. All right. So this is what happens. So Jenni is reacting, and I see that she's upset. And I feel this in a lot of different ways, but it's always worse if it's any one of the three most significant women in my life, my wife or my two daughters. I don't manage that well. I manage tears. We have Kleenex all over the place in my office. I always tell people their tears are welcome, and I really believe that unless it's my wife or my two daughters, and then inside I start freaking out, because I love these people and they matter so greatly to me. So I see that and I don't know what to do, and it taps my helpless, powerless button. And I instantly, without even thinking, go into fix-it mode. Now here's where it gets weird, and this is what's so bizarre, that this happens with couples all the time. When I go into fix-it mode, what happened to you?
Well, for me, when he goes into fix-it mode, I feel judged. I feel like he was telling me that I was the one at fault and I had done something. And when I started to, react to that and started to talk to him and such, the words that came out were defensive words. I began to explain myself. That's really what being defensive is when you just start explaining what you did and such. Like, well, I didn't really say anything wrong, and she was the one that wrote down those statements and stuff, and I was being really kind on the chat, and I just kind of went into defensive mode.
And since I'm trying to be helpful, and clearly it wasn't being perceived as helpful, I feel immediately misunderstood, so my misunderstood button gets pushed. Yeah. And then I get defensive because I want to explain to, hey, no, that's not what I meant, which pushed her button.
Yeah, so I feel like, well, he's not listening to me, so I feel invalidated. What I just said is completely invalidated. And then I go into explaining who's right and who's wrong. And I'm not talking about the lady on the game. I'm talking about us. He's wrong and I'm right. So
yeah, so you can kind of see how this goes. This is what is so bizarre about this cycle. And I don't know how it gets this way and why it's this way, but I just know it is this way for everybody. And we have couples, and we took it in super slow-mo now, okay? It really slowed it down. But guys, honestly, when this gets rolling between couples, it reminds me most of a 4th of July pinwheel. You light the fuse, and then all of a sudden they start to go, and it's spinning fast and sparks flying, and that's common. Yeah. Now, sometimes couples are not like this, and it becomes like a Cold War, and it's quiet, but it's the same cycle underneath it. And it's amazing how that happens. So what's actually going on? Okay? Underlying this, what's really happening is that our brain processes emotional fear in the same way as physical fear. When we feel afraid, it doesn't even matter if something's actually there. The thought of something that worries us triggers the same brain process. It's what we call an amygdala hijack. The amygdala is a gland in your brain, and when it gets triggered, it sends a message out that releases hormones like adrenaline and so forth that readies us into our fight or flight mode. Okay? And really what happens is there's an amazing shift in blood flow. Any guess where the blood flows to? If you're going to go into fight or flight mode, it goes to your arms and your legs to get you ready to fight or flee. Where does it go from? Your brain. It leaves your brain to go to your extremities. You are physiologically handicapped to think clearly in that moment. There is no way that you can think clearly when the blood has left your brain. Okay, and emotional intelligence goes out the window. So what's actually going on then with these buttons?
Yeah, what is it that's getting set off in you? And basically, buttons are past wounds that we can have new buttons develop as we grow, but typically we bring most of our buttons with us into the relationship. So those are...
I came with a pack of them to our marriage.
Yeah, me too. So it's those past wounds that we feel when someone bumps into them and when they talk to us or something that they may do. It's kind of like if Bob had a bruise on his arm, and then I walked by him and I happened to hit the bruise. Now he might say to me, Jenny, golly, that hurt.
Yeah, what do you think I'm thinking at that point? I'm going, I feel the pain and I'm going, ouch, you hurt me.
Yeah.
That's immediately what I thought, cause and effect, right? But what's the truth? Did she hurt me? No, she just bumped my bruise. The bruise, the wound was already there. She tapped it, and sure, there is a bit of a cause effect, but the magnitude of what I feel is greater because there was a pre-existing wound. And most of the buttons that you possess, you brought with you to the party. And they get tapped regularly by your spouse. And do you have any guess who is more skilled at pushing my buttons than anybody on the planet?
I'll give you a hint.
Now, why do you think that is? Because she wants to hurt me? No, the truth is because nobody is closer. I don't let anybody get even close to the control panel. And she's so good at it, she frequently doesn't just push a button. She just leans on the whole control panel, all the buttons to press simultaneously, and my head just spins in place, okay? But it's because she's got access to it. And same thing with her. I have access because she lets me close to those tender, vulnerable spots in a way that nobody else on the planet does.
Yeah, so because buttons are our wounds, we actually become afraid of having those pushed. For instance, mine are that I'm afraid, I kind of protect and I get afraid of being controlled. I might be afraid or have a tender kind of heart for being supported. I might, with approval and valued and validation. So those are kind of tender spots for me among other ones. But so what we think though is that, like Bob said, is that he pushed my button, and so then I have this external reaction, the above water stuff that goes on, and start blaming him for pushing my button. But what we try to tell couples is that instead of blaming your spouse, is that you actually can feel a button go off. It actually kind of makes you might get like feeling across your brow or palpitations in your heart, or you get a flushed feeling about you, or you get upset and kind of you feel that energy of anger coming on you. So when you feel that, you can actually go to the Lord instead and say, oh, my button just got pushed. I'm going to take some time and talk to God about this.
Yeah, so what we teach in the intensive, obviously understanding the reactive cycle doesn't actually take you to a better place. But it does help people to identify what's going on so that this unconscious reactive spin can be turned into something conscious. And once you're aware, like Jenni just said, you go, whoo-wee, I am triggered, I am stirred up. And we ask clients all the time to say, okay, what happens in your body that's the tip-off that you had a button pushed? How do you know? And it's a little different for everybody. We literally go from client to client when we're in a group and say, so what physiologically happens for you? Because it's like the red light flashing on the dashboard, and you say, whoa, I am stirred up. And then you wake up and you become conscious. And then what we want people to see is what the options are, different than just continually reacting in the unconscious spin. What alternatives do you have that you could do that would be more righteous, more loving, more caring, more true to who God created you to be, more Christ-like? So this is just something to wake people up to what's happening below the waterline, so it opens up an array of possibilities and alternatives to be more righteous and to create a better, more satisfying relationship.
So when our button gets pushed, a lot of times what we're feeling inside of us is what we really want also at the same time. Oh, I wish we had this in our marriage. My list of wants are that I want to be heard, supported, approved, valued, and validation. And typically I have like 3 pages of wants, okay? But but what we have come to find out that what your wants are those things that God has given you that you are passionate about. So it is not the responsibility of someone else to give you your wants. Instead, we can get to know our wants, find out what God has given us that we are passionate about, grow those in the Lord, and then bring those into our relationship, our family, our community, and our world. That's what our wants are. I know it's really, really hard to not try to get your wants met from your spouse or even your kids and your friends. But it is very, very valuable.
And what Jenni's saying that I think is so worth repeating is that the things that are the desires of our heart are longings of ours because they reflect something that God created in us. The fact that she wants to be heard is because she values being heard, so she is a person who naturally listens really carefully to people, because that's a reflection of who God created her to be. She wants to feel supported, and she is very supportive of others. She wants to feel approved, and it's amazing how much affirmation and approval Jenni's capable of giving to people, because that's reflective of who she is, not just what she wants from me and from others.
When I learned this, I actually was not good at hearing others. I was really good at talking. And when the Lord really revealed this to me, and He showed me that He's really good at listening, because when we pray, how much of the conversation in prayer is us talking to Him? Yeah, so we don't do a real good job of listening to the Lord, and He's a really good listener to us, and He said, I want you to become a really good listener. And when I did, I felt so more balanced, because I wanted to be heard. And now I was spending time learning how to hear others, and it was really a passion of mine that I had not cultivated. And so that's another thing that we do, is we really encourage people to cultivate their wants.
So for over 22 years, we have been learning now so many things about God's design for life, God's design for marriage, what works and what doesn't. And what we've realized is that it doesn't just work for couples in crisis. Mm-hmm. It actually works. These ideas, these principles, these tools work every bit as well, and maybe better, for couples who are just doing good and want to do better.
It's always so comforting to know that we're not the only ones that experience this in conflict. So it's fun at times to hear the marriage experts talk about, hey, we all go through this. Here's what it's looked like for us. They did a great job of kind of explaining what the reactive cycle is and how do we even begin to think about breaking out of that. You know, one of the things, Erin, for me, is we've thought about the reactive cycle and certainly are aware of that within our own marriage, is how much these buttons of ours can really be tied to lies that Satan really has tried to write on our hearts.
And even fears that these lies are true about us. So when our buttons get triggered, we don't like it. We don't want that to be true about us. And I would say first and foremost, a step toward healing is becoming aware of what are these buttons, and as well as how do we react to them.
Yeah.
And we kind of develop a filter, and thus we start seeking to see, like, is this true about me? And of course we have the enemy right there, the father of lies, whispering, saying, oh, yep, there it is again. See, that must be true about you.
Yeah. I remember one time as we were in a new neighborhood, just this, the family that we lived next to had gone through a really tough divorce. So obviously hard on the kids. But I'll just never forget this one interaction I had with, actually, I think she was 5 or 6 at the time. I'll just call her Sarah. But I remember her talking about the divorce and just said to me, just out of the blue, like I'm just talking to this little 5-6-year-old, and she goes, my mom and dad, they got divorced. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she goes, yeah, it was my fault. And it was such a fascinating experience of just sitting with her going, now tell me more, honey, about that. Why is that your fault? And just how to make sense of all that is probably easier for her to blame herself. She didn't say any of this, but I thought in my mind, like her just struggling with, well, if I had been, good enough, or if I hadn't been so defective, or if there's something's wrong with me, because my dad left, just seeing her wrestle through that, that's where Satan jumps in, and how that then impacts us, our relationships someday.
Yeah, it impacts everything.
Yeah.
How we see ourselves, how we engage with others, how we do life. These lies end up showing up. And so again, it's so important to battle those lies and speak back to the father of lies.
Yeah, and that's why I love that we've been given the Holy Spirit, who's often called the Spirit of Truth. And that's really how you attack these lies. So even how do you begin the healing process around these buttons is really going after the lie, asking God, what is true? What is true about me? And just allowing His Word I've loved how he's used praise and worship music to speak truth into my life. He uses you all the time to speak truth into my life. But I love that we have a God so committed to truth. I'm going to battle that by going to the Lord. God, what is true about me? How do you see me?
Right.
And, Bob and I wrote a book called The 9 Lies That Will Destroy Your Marriage. And we really dug into what we're talking about, these buttons, these reactions, the reactive cycle. So if you need more supports in your marriage, we're going to send this book to you for a gift of any amount. We also have a weekly e-newsletter that you can sign up for free.
And also remember that we are here to support you and help you. You can call us at 1-800, the letter A, FAMILY, FAMILY, and our team of counselors will call you back and spend some more time with you over the phone to really help you understand some first steps, whatever your scenario is, whatever your situation is. They'll also give you a recommendation for a Christian counselor in your area as well.
As you listen to the podcast, as you're recognizing some things, even like we talked about today, the reactive cycle, but how you've been helped, we would love to hear about the difference that the podcast makes in your life. So all you have to do is click the black tab where you can use the contact form on the site to send us an email, but we would love to read and better understand how the Lord is working in your life and in your marriage. As our family has expanded with our grandson, we are so excited, love hanging out with him, spending time. I love last night, actually. We were with our oldest daughter and her husband and just holding our grandson on my chest for like an hour. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. But really his birth has caused me to think about legacy, kind of what we're passing down to our family. What are they going to remember about us? I love in Psalms 78, verse 4, it says, "We will not hide them from our descendants. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power, and the wonders that he has done." So it's, kind of like the verse is talking about, what are we passing down? What are we telling our kids, our grandkids about not only the Lord, but even about us?
And when people say things like create a legacy, it doesn't have to be something monumental that takes your entire life to build, like a corporation
Right.
or a foundation. It can be something as simple as what we're going to share with you today.
Yeah, it's actually something that you can turn into sort of a story time with your kids or with your grandkids. I can't wait to do this with our grandson. And this is where you simply get together with your spouse and then write a how we met and married, kind of what's your love story? I remember hearing a quote that said, "Everybody has a love story, but ours is my very, very favorite." And it's this opportunity to kind of tell the story of your life, your journey together as a couple.
And the opportunity is to include pictures, maybe some special mementos,
Yeah.
pressed flowers, small trinkets, things that were important to you both, like baseball game tickets or cards that you gave one another, even going back to what was it that most attracted you to your spouse?
Yeah.
The first time you met them?
Yeah.
Or what
Which is what? How would you answer that?
your sense of humor?
Oh, that was really quick. I was going to say your beauty just blew me away.
Yeah.
It allured me
Yes.
to you. It's your love story. Write it however you like. Include all these fun, moments and memories. Make it a book, or really, if you're so inclined in this day and age, make it a movie. Use your cell phone and just sit it there and let you and your spouse just kind of reminisce about what your journey has been like.
The highlights could be, your wedding day, funny things that happened, highlights of great things that happened in the relationship, maybe things that were unexpected, adding children to the mix, all of those things, just the highlights of your love story.
Yeah, and we encourage couples as they think about their story to kind of break it into 3 big sections. One, what are the highs? So like you're saying, all these really fun memories.
And then what are the lows?
Yeah.
What were the challenges? What did you learn through those challenges? I even think about what advice would you give as a result of those challenges to your grandchildren, to your grandchildren's children. that it's really going, this is the advice I give to you as a result of the highs and the lows.
Yeah. And then always have the turning points.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you make God the hero of your story. This is when you're saying, we went through this really hard time, but here's what God did.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it in the Old Testament. Remember the Ebenezer stone. These were rocks that were stacked as a way to say that God showed up. We're putting these rocks here as a reminder for everybody, whoever sees them, that God was present and here's what he did for us in our life. And in the same way, that's what we want to do. So as you think about that story, just kind of divide it into those three parts.
And trust us, while you're doing this with your spouse, you're going to think back on those special times. And you know what? You're probably going to reconnect with those feelings, and it will hopefully strengthen your relationship bonds.
So if you want to do this, you're brave enough, courageous enough, putting in the time to put this down or to video this, we would love to hear about it. Please share this with us. We always take such inspiration from love stories, especially yours. All right, well, let's move on to our weekly Q&A.
Today's question is from Lou, who emailed us and asked, Dear Greg and Erin, my husband is an accomplished man who is very good at playing blackjack. He doesn't have a gambling problem, meaning he doesn't need to gamble. He's not addicted, and he always wins. Sometimes it's $50, other times it's $350. Gambling is not for me, though, and it feels a little sketch when he plays. Is it wrong from a biblical perspective? I told my husband if he's ever losing, he should pack it up and come home. He agrees. Is my icky feeling about him gambling my spirit telling me that it's wrong? Or is it just my personal feelings that I don't ever want to lose money?
Yeah, Lou, we love that you're really thinking this through. What does the Bible say? How does this impact us? How do I respond to your husband's gambling, all that? And that's a fantastic way to approach it. And I would say a couple things. One, Lou, you're not the only one wrestling with this. I think it's more than half, about 55% of adults in the U.S. participated in some form of gambling, while 85% of adults have gambled at least once in their lifetime.
Wow.
So, that's a lot. And when we talk about gambling, you think about things like the lottery, casino games, sports betting, poker, online gambling. All those things really kind of roll up to what we're talking gambling.
In sports betting is kind of on the rise right now. Hasn't it risen like hundreds of percents?
Yeah.
Over.
It's like even doubled from last year.
Right.
So it's a big deal. And I think when I get this question asked, I always try to go, first and foremost, kind of from a very, very high level for anyone gambling. Again, we're not here to judge if you should do that or not. So, but just think about this. It's not as harmless as people may think. So gambling is built on losses, pain, and the suffering of others. And so when I say that, people are like, wait, what? I've never thought about that. Wait, tell me more. What do you mean? So think about it. For someone to win at gambling, others have had to lose. And sometimes the biggest losers are the gamblers, their closest loved ones. So how it impacts a marriage, when money is being used, or the secrecy, just all that.
Well, I think she's really asking, is this a sin from a biblical perspective? What would you say?
Well, again, the Bible doesn't directly address gambling, but it's talking about, we're constantly being told to be good stewards of our resources. You think about the parable of the talents and how, the one who really got a stern lecture was the one that hid the money, versus, trying to keep it safe. And so we're that message of, God is the one who gives you the resources. We need to be good stewards then of the resources, of the money that he provides for us. And so thinking about it in that way, that's a great question to talk through as a couple. When we gamble, are we being good stewards? And that, again, you guys get to think that through.
I would even say it's important for a couple to talk about what's your history with gambling, because if you had a dad, a brother, an uncle who had a major gambling addiction and it somehow impacted you, maybe as a child or an adolescent, you're going to be a little tender towards gambling. So what's the history there.
Right. So the Bible does talk about the love of money. There's a lot of really good verses. Just, you could Google that and just sit as a couple and talk about, what are the different verses that would apply to a question like, should we gamble or not?
Yeah. But I think, Lou, that icky feeling you talked about, sit with that, explore it. What is this saying to you? What's the icky feeling telling you? Is this spiritual discernment or is this a personal preference? And both can be valid, both need to matter. And so when you're exploring this, maybe you can even bring your husband in on it and say, I've got this icky feeling and I'm not quite sure what it means or what I should do with it. But as I've sat with it, maybe, I have some strong feelings about this. Can we talk about those?
Yeah. Any sort of gambling is built on kind of that dopamine hit, which creates addiction. And we just crave that hit, that excitement,
Right.
the thrill of winning. But gambling uniquely is built on variable rewards. So, you're not always rewarded the same way each and every time. And when a reward is variable, it can
It
easily
drives it,
becomes
yeah.
an addiction because we get addicted to that feeling,
And
what's it going
desiring
to
that
happen this
feeling.
time?
Yeah.
And so it definitely impacts the individual, but also the marriage, especially when it becomes secretive. I'm not telling you about this. I'm hiding money. I'm taking money really that's for bills and food and other important things, and I'm using it for that. That's when it really starts to injure the marriage. So again, talking about what are the right boundaries? So if we decide, hey, I'm okay with gambling, how do you really make sure then, Lou, that you guys talk through, then what's that going to look like for us?
And recognizing we're on the same team here. So how can we do this in a way that feels good to me and to you?
Yeah.
And thus we can move forward in unity.
Yeah.
So thank you for your question, Lou. Such a great question. We'll be sending you your copy of our book, Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage. And if you have a question for us, we'd be happy to dive into discussion about it. Just click the black voicemail tab on the side of the screen at our homepage. And thank you so much for participating in the show. We can't wait to hear from you.
Well, thank you for joining us on Crazy Little Thing Called Marriage.
Yes, thank you for following the show and sharing it with your friends and family. We want you to have a seat at the table every week as we help equip you and your spouse to have a lifelong satisfying marriage.
Yeah, we want to see you guys growing spiritually as individuals and as a couple,
so that you can turn right around and invest in other couples to help them build thriving marriages.
Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next Monday about this crazy little thing called marriage.